Hi guys, what I want to talk about in this tutorial is give you a little bit more insight into making a figures and just basically give you some more options for what you could do. So last time we talked about Inkscape and how we could make figures by combining different images that we found online. And we would do things like look for a horse line art or something like that. And we were trying to get one of these silhouette outlines, which is really easy for something like Inkscape to use and manipulate. However, that's not always possible. Sometimes our mythical creature is just not going to have a very nice line art for us to use in this case. So we might want to try and use some other techniques. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. You don't have to use all these, but this is something you can do if you're interested in making your figure a little bit better. So you could start going through, say if I want to get a flying dragon and I'm interested in the shape of this dragon, um, what I might start doing is scrolling through all these images and looking for something that would be simple to use. And something like this one over here, the silhouette on a white background, is going to be really a little bit easier for Inkscape to use. So if I use that one, I can find my Game of Thrones dragon, drag and drop it into Inkscape. Here it is. I can scale it to the right size. Remember holding control now, so it uh, doesn't cause distortion. And I can go object, trace bitmap. And normally what we use is something like this brightness cutoff. But when you do that now, you'll notice it's not very good anymore because this is no longer a line art. It's a very complex image and we're getting this weird sort of structure. So we're not particularly happy with that. We can try a few tricks. We can try edge detection instead of this brightness cutoff. So this is another option, this trace bitmap thing. And if I do that, in this case, we get something that's not bad. So that's quite good in terms of an outline of this dragon. And again, if you look at the difference here, we see this is a blurry sort of image, and here this is a nice sharp line, and we can scale this to any size that we want and manipulate it in any way we're interested in. Um, and of course, color it with any color we like, green or brown or whatever. There's a bit of a problem here where you have to try and find whether all the shapes are whatever. Okay, so we could try that, but at the same time, we lose a lot of these features. So I've lost all these features in the arms. Maybe I'm interested in them. Um, so what do I do in those cases? Or what could happen, or more likely to happen, is your image is not as perfect as this one. Um, Maybe it's a little bit more like this one here, where you have it, you've just captured it from a video or something like that. And if we try to do something in Inkscape with this image, we're not going to get anything interesting happening out of it. So if I take this one and I try to trace the bitmap, if I use edge detection, it's going to look kind of weird and not particularly detailed. So that's not very helpful in that case too. So what I can use in this case is a different program. And I'm going to give you a quick introduction into a program called Gimp. That's actually its name. I didn't make it up, but you can just Google GIMP and you'll see this image manipulation program, and it's free to download. It's available on Mac or PCs or Linux. And so I just downloaded it, installed it, and I had a quick look. It's quite easy to use. So you have a window like this, or you might start with new, and then I'm going to create just an A4 image. So here's my blank A4 image, and just like what we saw in the other case, we have this layers and I can add layers to it. So I can create a new layer. Oops, that was a new layer group. I actually want to just create a new layer. I'm going to use this one here. Okay. Um, and let me just delete this layer. Uh, so I just want a new layer. And if I draw on this new layer like this, you can see anything in this layer can be hidden from the field of view, and I can delete that layer. So what I might want to do then in this case is find my image again. I'm just going to go with this dragon here. So I've dragged and dropped it in here, and I can now trace over my image. I want it to be a little bit bigger. Um, it's a little bit hard to use in this case. You have to find the right tool. So here's a tool that's going to allow me to scale. Oops, I can deform it. Really, I just want to make it bigger. So I'm going to, that rotates it, that deforms it. There we go. So I was looking for that one in the center, which makes it a bit bigger. There it is. The little symbol there is going to make it bigger. So now I have a nice big thing. I'm going to hit enter. And that's my image there that is now in the right spot. And so I want to draw over this image um, using just like a normal pen tool or a brush tool. And there's this brush tool or a pencil tool. You can use either one. But what you want to do is make sure you're drawing on a um, on a layer, and then that layer is above the layer that you're trying to draw on right now. So say I want to work on this layer. Um, I can move that up so it's now on the top. And if I zoom in, I can actually start drawing over the top of this image. So I can start drawing in, and if I hide that layer, it disappears. And I can also hide the other layer independent of one another. And so I can start to draw in the shape of my wings, and you guys can obviously spend more time on it than I am gonna spend on it. But you can see I can start getting a lot more detail in of my dragon wing, and I can include, oh, this is really rough. You guys are going to go much more slower than I am and do a much nicer job. You can use your artistic talents here a little bit more. Uh, and if I hide it, you can start to see I've started to get the shape of my dragon here. You can spend as much time or as little time as you want. If you want to highlight certain aspects of its physiology, you might take different images and just draw out different parts of this. Um, you can keep going until you end up with an entire dragon. In fact, I've done that already. Here's one that I did quite a bit slower, and you can see it's a little bit more detailed here. So if I take this image here now, you'd see it's still made up of pixels, which is not great. But I can now export this. If I go File, Export to untitled.png. Well, you could also just come up with Export here. So if I export this one, File, Export, or Export As, and I can give it a name, Dragon Sketch.png, and I'm gonna store it in this spot right here. And it gives me a whole pile of options. I just took the default. And then you can see I now have my dragon sketch here, which is just made up of, of my image, and it's still a little blurry, right? And here's the one I did earlier. It's the same deal, still a little bit blurry, but remember, we can now bring this into Inkscape, and that's where the fun really begins. So we can go there, I can bring my dragon sketch into Inkscape. Sure, it's a little bit blurry now, but if I go Tools, Trace Bitmap, I'll choose this brightness cutoff. It's going to do a much better job of tracing my image here. So here is now the new one. You can see the old one here is all pixely. We'll get rid of that. Here's my new one, and you can see now it looks quite nicer. It's smoothed out all those lines so we don't have those edges. And hopefully I can fill it in now. Look at that. I can now color it whatever color I want. And I'm on my way to making a really nice figure. I just have to add in that extra little bit there. So there we go. That's another way you can start making your dragon. So this is going to be figure one dragon. And I can start doing things like I can add in a line. Most important, if I hold Control, I can make that line straight. See, it wants to make it straight. And then I can add a scale bar, which is like 100 meters, or whatever the exact dimensions are, which you're going to figure out by scaling it to a known object and so forth. And we can make these multi-panel figures, so this can be 1A, or this could be part of a multi-panel figure, so I could have A up here, and then I could put B and C down here where I add in different aspects, maybe lung morphology or something like that. Okay, so there's another way that you can use freely available programs to make really nice figures really quickly.